On Sunday, Luxembourg's Minister of Health, Martine Deprez, attended the inauguration of the Lost Screen Memorial, and she posted about it publicly, and she named Meghan and Dr. Tedros directly. She tagged the WHO, her own ministry, and the Luxembourg's government's official account. She shared a video from the memorial. This was all on her Instagram, by the way, and it's still there. Her caption said that behind every screen is a child, a family, and a reminder that protecting children online is a shared responsibility. Oof, that's deep. And she said that violence against children, including digital harm, remains a public health and societal challenge. In fact, she said it was a major public health issue.
What fascinates me about this entire situation is that the conversation around Meghan Markle has shifted so dramatically that some people genuinely have not noticed what is happening in real time. Because while certain tabloids are still obsessing over crowd sizes, social media comments, and daily outrage cycles, Meghan and Harry are now operating in rooms that actually shape policy. And that is a completely different level of influence. So on Sunday, Luxembourg's Minister of Health, Martine Deprez, attended the inauguration of the Lost Screen Memorial and publicly posted about it on Instagram. Not privately, not quietly, publicly. She directly named Meghan Markle and Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. She tagged the WHO, her ministry, and the official Luxembourg government account. And the message itself was incredibly powerful. She said that behind every screen is a child, a family, and a reminder that protecting children online is a shared responsibility. Think about that for a second. That is not celebrity gossip language. That is policy language. That is governmental language. She went even further and described online harm against children as a major public health issue. Not an inconvenience, not internet drama, a public health issue. And then she said governments, institutions, platforms, and society as a whole must work together to create safer environments for children both online and offline. Now, why is that important? Because this is exactly the conversation Harry and Meghan have been trying to push for years. People mocked them when they first started speaking about social media harms. People accused them of being sensitive or trying to silence criticism simply because they themselves had experienced online abuse. But look where we are now. 5 years later, ministers from multiple sovereign nations are publicly echoing the exact concerns Harry and Meghan raised years ago. France, Brazil, Luxembourg, 3 different countries, 3 different governments, 3 different political cultures, yet all converging around the same core message that online safety, especially for children, requires coordinated action from governments and tech platforms. That is not random. That is influence. And this is the difference between temporary media noise and long-term institutional impact. Because anyone can trend online for 24 hours. Anyone can have a viral headline. But very few people manage to influence the global policy conversation itself. That is much harder. And honestly, this is why some people seem so furious lately. Because the old narrative about Harry and Meghan being isolated or irrelevant is collapsing in front of everyone's eyes. When one government minister attends your event, people can dismiss it as courtesy. When multiple ministers from different countries publicly attend, publicly post, and publicly align themselves with your work, that becomes something much bigger. That becomes international legitimacy. And let's be very clear here. This work did not appear overnight. Archewell Foundation has spent years focusing on digital well-being, online safety, mental health, and responsible technology spaces. Quietly, consistently, without needing daily photo opportunities. That sustained work is now paying off at the highest levels. And what I also find fascinating is that Luxembourg may be geographically small, but institutionally it carries enormous weight internationally. It is deeply connected to European governance structures, international law, and multilateral diplomacy. So when Luxembourg's health minister publicly frames online safety in this way while connected to a WHO event involving Meghan, that matters. A lot. Especially because Minister de Prez specifically mentioned platforms themselves as having responsibility. That is the critical shift. We are no longer simply talking about individuals protecting themselves online. We are now talking about platform accountability, design responsibility, government intervention, policy frameworks, and that is exactly the direction Meghan's speech was pointing toward. The dial is moving, slowly perhaps, but it is moving. And this is why the obsession with superficial popularity metrics feels increasingly outdated, because influence is not always measured by how loudly people scream online. Sometimes influence is measured by who enters the room with you, who publicly stands beside your work, who repeats your language in official government communication, and whether your ideas begin shaping policy conversations internationally. That is real power. Not noise, real power. Meanwhile, despite years of smears, mockery and relentless attacks, Harry and Meghan continue building relationships with global organizations, world leaders, health officials and advocacy groups. That should tell people something. Because institutions do not casually align themselves publicly with people they view as unserious. And honestly, the contrast right now is striking. While parts of the British media remain stuck in old culture war narratives, Harry and Meghan have moved on to the international stage where conversations are about mental health, digital safety, children's well-being, and global cooperation. That is a very different arena. And whether people personally like Meghan or not, it is becoming increasingly difficult to deny that her voice is being taken seriously by influential people across the world. The same woman they mocked for years is now helping shape conversations governments are beginning to prioritise. That is quite the reversal, isn't it? So, in the end, I think this entire moment says less about celebrity and far more about persistence. Because Harry and Meghan kept speaking about these issues long after people laughed at them for it. And now governments themselves are echoing the same concerns. That is what long-term impact looks like.